Alright guys, today we're going to be doing an Arcane Lineage tier list. Now this is way different from the last class tier list where I basically did no research compared to the amount of effort I've put into this one, all the time I've put into this one. Either way, I finally get to have a really good grasp of where everything in the meta is right now. Now, almost every class is kind of broken in their own way. They all have a really, really strong niche that they can fulfill. Most of them do insane amounts of damage, but that's also with bugs sometimes too, so we also don't count that. But it's not just based on general use, it's also based on Metrom too. Now, it's not completely based on Metrom, so some of these classes aren't in their ballpark, let's just say, but they should be much better and well more placed than last time. And now with Assassin, I'd say it's S tier for being by far the most consistent damage, really. Luck builds are like the only way to go on Assassin. They are really good support for Metrom. They are also just really good for taking out every other boss. You can easily solo Yarthul. You could easily do Dorian, maybe not by yourself, but you could. The only really downside is fighting Seraphon, but there's no real incentive to fight Seraphon in the first place, so there's kind of just no reason to not choose Assassin for consistent damage with DOT, so. But now, Berserker, I had it in C tier in my last video. I got rid of C tier. It's, I'd say, in a much better spot than what I thought it was. However, it is not in a good spot, so it's definitely, it's top of B tier. I think I need to give my reasoning why it's top of B tier and nothing more. It's the fact that Rage and Power reduces you to one shot, and I know it does give you like a lot of protection, one shot protection and stuff, and unkillability for like however many turns, but it's also just not a good position to put yourself in with this class. Blessed Enchant is pretty decent on this class. It's the only real thing that makes this class viable in the first place. Without Blessed, it's really hard to say that this class is really good. Now, with Inferion, it is better than most, but I'd say it's not increased by much. Berserker, it's one of those things where you bring it to Metrom and maybe another boss. Like, maybe Thorian, if he has too much energy. You have to set up for Carnage for a while, though. You have to set up for Carnage and not die. So, honestly, I like where it is, but I want it to be more busted. That's just me. I think it's in a really good spot, though. So, you could also put it in A tier, too. But I think B tier, specifically, for the fact that it kind of feels niche. Just not as very niche as very niche. Now Blade Dancer, yeah, no, it's just not what it was. Now Blade Dancer is pretty good, I will say that, but none of the builds are as prominent as they used to be. Most of the nerfs to Blade Dancer weren't even needed when they brought it there. It's just not a good class to play anymore. It used to be much better. It's still pretty decent with Blessed Enchant, don't get me wrong. It does pretty consistent damage. However, Vidir, I know it's definitely going to get reworked. The devs already said that they will. But Vidir basically does its simple domain just better in every way. I really want them to buff simple domain, since it's just a cool move to have, right? It's just a very cool move to have. I think its damage is pretty decent. It just needs actual buffs. I don't think it needs many reworks. Like, sure, it can have a rework or two, but it doesn't need its whole kit reworked. But that's all I can really say. It's pretty solid damage still. Every class in here is pretty solid damage. Even Monk, as much as I don't want to say it, but... Now, I'm gonna assume that this is Brawler. Brawler? It's an A tier. The reason Brawler is an A tier is because Brawler is by far the most consistent damage that I've ever had in the game. Everyone who plays Brawler does very consistent high damage, but it's all single target, so what can you do? I think it's perfect, honestly. In Metrom, it's good. Maybe not as good as some others, but it's still really, really good. But I don't really think it quite deserves S tier for like being top of meta of anything. Yeah. Now, Dark Wraith, I'm gonna say, well, there's bugs going on, so it's not as quite as strong as it would be, but it's still S. It's still S tier. Maybe low S though. From the start of the update, I've learned that it's definitely not low. It's definitely not S, like in high tier anymore. They're just builds that just do higher damage. However, this is still a very viable class. It does very consistent damage. Dark Smite is probably the best move that, like, just one of the best moves that I've seen. It increases your crit chance by a lot and sets you up for the actual class, so, which is just Dark or Eruption. So Elementalist, I'm assuming. I'm gonna say Elementalist. Elementalist is high A tier. I'm gonna say, because I've just seen its damage, it definitely deserves to be this high in the tier list. It's by far the most fair. I know people may not like it being this strong, but I think it's kind of perfect. Maybe a very, very slight nerf to Lightning Crash. Or Blaze. Nah, Blaze doesn't need a thing. The only thing that might ever need a nerf is Lightning Crash, but I think it's fine where it is, because you have to do a lot of Arcane. So, I like, you have like 90 something health. Like 95 health. If you like put everything into Arcane, that's much lower than all the builds here. Like for the optimized build for the most damage. It's definitely the most glass candidate, but I think it's perfect. Now, Hexer. I love this class, but it's by far not the best. It is really, really good support, but it's also not even really viable against many bosses or basically anything, honestly. In First Abyss, it used to have like a bug where you just applied 20 stacks of Hex at Metrom when Metrom is supposed to have Hex, but that was like the only thing that you have. Abyss Anchor is still by far the best support move though. I can't imagine a better support move, if I'm gonna be honest. Getting rid of your opponent's energy and then making them not get energy for a few turns is probably the best move out of everything in this tier list, except like obviously the very, very high damage to stuff that needs rebalanced, but it's kind of perfect where it is. I want to say that they just need to rework Inverse Abyss, and I like them being able to apply a bunch of Hex, but instead of they should be able to apply Hex, but to stuff like Metron where they don't take any Hex, they definitely need to make it so you apply more just status of Hex in general, because it is not an interesting class to play for, like, after you apply Abyss Anchor. Abyss Anchor is, like, the only thing that you really need to worry about. Maybe getting rid of Cursed is good, but meh. Monk. I've come around on Monk. However, I've not fully come around, because Monk is incredibly niche, and it definitely needs a rebalance. I know people keep saying how their Monk builds do so much damage, but I don't want to have to run the most optimal build. Like, by the way, some of these builds are just absolutely broken with the most optimal build. Hexer is really cool with the most optimal build, but Monk, if you're not running like the perfect class for it, it is not that strong. Flame Drop, I don't think needs a buff. I think they need to bring back the meditation passive, and they need to bring Blazing Barrage back to its former glory, because Blazing Barrage used to do some pretty decent damage, but now it barely does anything for me. My friend keeps complaining about how he keeps complaining about it too much, but Blazing Barrage just does no damage. It does like 200 damage at most, and I get it that it's a full setup build, but it shouldn't need this much setup just for Flaming Drop. And maybe make Blazing Barrage another setup move for Flame Drop. That's just an idea, but overall, it's still pretty viable compared to what I thought before. Necromancer. Necromancer is by far... I know it's gonna get an ultra buff, but I still think it's like B tier. If the summons weren't bugged. If they weren't bugged, it'd be like at least B tier, where it's pretty viable. I'd probably say top of B tier, maybe even high A, but that's only really because you can revive people and your summons would be doing good, but summons are mostly bugged right now. So I'm gonna say Necromancer needs a rebalance, so they're gonna rebalance it anyway, so I can't really do anything about that, but whatever. Paladin, a lot of people are sleeping on Paladin. I saw somebody say in the comments in the last video that Paladins don't get regen that might have just been in a very specific way. They don't get regen after doing a specific move, but from what I see, they still do regen. It might be a bug, but I still think Paladin, honestly, it's S tier, in my opinion. Very low S tier, though. It's a very, very low S tier, because I had it during Metron, but between the last class tier list and this one, Paladin is still pretty strong. A lot of people sleep on Paladin. I think it's pretty strong. You just guard, you tank somebody's damage during Metron. I literally, I don't know how it's even possible, but I took damage from somebody else's. I took damage from Oblivion, and my Paladin just absorbed all of that damage that I took. Now I left him on 100 HP, but it kind of goes to show that Paladin just kind of saves anyone. I took literally no damage from Oblivion. The Paladin just tank all of it. So there's a reason why it's an S tier. It also has really, really good support abilities. So yeah. Ranger, I'm gonna say it's, well, speed builds in general are kind of broken right now, so I'm gonna say it's unbalanced, but it's more like right here, I'd say. It doesn't really need a rework. I'd say just the speed bonuses need to slow down a little bit. In general, I think it's relatively okay. I don't think it's quite as unbalanced, but, you know, we're good. Rogue. A lot of people keep saying that Rogue is good. I've had somebody try to play Rogue for a week, and they still don't do good damage. However, they're still somehow better than Blade Dancer. Now, I've only seen somebody do an awful build of Blade Dancer, but the Blade Dancer is just relatively bad. Sorry to all the Blade Dancer glazers out there, but it's just kind of true. Rogue is also a really good farming class, but that's neither here nor there. Saint, it's an S tier. There's a bug going around where, well, it's not a bug, but the Saint passive is like bugged to where the fights just kind of happen indefinitely. Yeah, now they need to fix the bug where you use like any of your Saint moves and they crit, then it has like a chance to bug or something. That might be an over-exaggeration. It's not the quite exact bug, but you should be careful about using Saint, because somebody threw a dangerous mixture at Metrom when I fought him a couple days ago, and yeah, he kind of just he kind of just took all of that. Also, I moved Paladin down because there's nothing in A tier. It's making me feel weird. Impaler B tier. Definitely low B tier. Honestly, I'll probably remove Rogue to high, very niche. Impaler, it definitely needs another buff. A lot of people are saying that it also just got nerfed with the last Lancer. I was just looking at the patch notes, and on the surface they looked good, but in actual practical use, it's not that good. Yeah, it just kind of sucks. Now Lancer, I would say, now it's barely unbalanced. That's the thing. It's barely unbalanced because its burst damage is super incredibly good, but that's all the damage it has, and it has to meditate for 3 turns with the Echo Shard path. And meditating for 3 turns during Metrom is a death sentence. So you're just kind of cooked. Don't really know what else to say. You do Discharge and you do Empowered Pierce, and anything else in between the turns between those two are literally just setup. This is a full setup build, and it's both really good for the insane damage, but also really bad because you have to meditate for 3 turns, not in a row. However, you do need to meditate for 3 turns to do, I think, 50% more damage or something like that. It needs a nerf, but I don't want it to be gutted because honestly, I kind of love Lancer. It's fun to play. I like the fact that it's burst damage, but I can't think of a way that they can't just completely gut it immediately off the top of my head. So they're gonna have to like barely nerf Discharge's damage or something, because it does fair amount of damage usually. They need to nerf the fact that you do like 1,000 damage on base, but maybe make the setup more rewarding, or the same amount of damage as it is now, but you can make Discharge like 500 damage at most without setup. That's just one way to fix it, but this is technically the tier list. This needs a rebalance, in my opinion. Impaler needs a rebalance, and honestly, Hexer needs a rebalance. Blade Dancer needs a rebalance. Yeah, that's not quite the end of the video because there's some more stuff I want to talk about. However, if you don't want to see that, then that's the end of the video for you. But all of the classes are pretty unbalanced right now. If you think about it, Monk isn't even that like it isn't even that bad for how bad it is. I keep dogging on Monk, but you can do an insane amount of damage too. You can do so much with all of these classes, but I'm talking about in general, ranking them from each other. All of these classes, they're all viable, basically. They're all viable, at least with their optimal race. You could choose any single one of these and be perfectly fine, but this is the general tier list from all of them ranked from each other. Now, I think maybe some could be nerfed, some could be buffed, but that's the general things. I really want to see this game thrive, because this is honestly one of my favorite games that I've ever played, at least in terms of just actual combat. Now, I wanna address the last video a little bit more, because it was super incredibly bad. It was super rushed, I'd say. I didn't have any time to actually like fully check out the update. I think the last video was bad. Sorry for that, but this is a general, more correct tier list in everyone's opinion, I guess. Sorry if I placed your class a little bit lower than what I did last time that you glaze, but this is just more correct. This is probably the most accurate I could have gotten with this tier list. Comparing them to each other, I think the only class that might be out of place is Ranger. Ranger doesn't maybe quite deserve S tier. People sleep on Paladin still. Blade Dancer I probably sleep on, so anybody can correct me about that. Berserker, I've tried. I love Berserker still. I'd still play it even if it's bad, but it's not bad right now, so. Rogue, I don't think is incredibly bad. I just don't think it has a fun niche, I guess. Now, I really like all the constructive criticism I got from the last video, but all the actual toxicity needs to be toned down. Thank you to all the people that were constructive with their criticism and not just blatantly toxic about things, but to all the people that was blatantly toxic, youch. Yeah, no, that's about it. That's the general tier list.